What's up, Rockstars? I regret to inform you of some bad news. I don't like making these videos, but I need to tell you about what's been going on with Broken Anvil Miniatures and Level 52. They're the same company. We'll get into all that. Just know that there's been a lot of lies that have been told, a lot of BS that's been told, and a lot of I guess it's hiding facts from you guys and making sure that you guys are unaware of the true facts on how this company has driven itself into the ground because of its own bad decisions. We're going to be covering all of that and a lot more coming up right now. Okay, so as an FYI, disclaimer, of course, don't go, attacking people personally. I'm not going to be sharing any, addresses or anything like that here, though, through, the Better Business Bureau and stuff like that and registrations. You guys can get information. Just, be responsible for it. Report, maybe, if you want, but don't necessarily antagonize. And additionally, I have reached out to them. They have not responded to my email, but it's out there. And if they do end up responding, maybe after this video, I will let you guys know anything that they respond with. If they have more further comment on it. I did ask some direct questions around if they had comment on these specific things. And again, so far I have not heard back, but I did do some diligence in contacting them, trying to get their word on things before I make a video like this, because it is a fairly negative video. Now, I'm going to be covering their side of things too and what they say, but I'm going to also kind of be countering it with direct points that have been seen otherwise. Also know that they do have a Discord that's under lockdown, so I don't have access to that. I have an image of one of the responses on Discord, but that's all I have from that area. So that's kind of an enigma, though we'll talk about that as well. So without further ado, what is Broken Anvil Studio? So this is Broken Anvil Studio Paint, though they have done several other things. So if you look here under how many they've created, they also did Forged. Remember, I covered this several times because they launched it 3 times, twice on GameFound, and they canceled it, and then once on Kickstarter, and they let it run through. Then they did the Broken Anvil Studio Paint. Before that, they did the Rivenstone. I remember covering this one also. And then the Dungeon Delvers way back in the day. And that didn't fund the first time, but did the second time they ran that. Now that's under that. They also had, and what they started out with is a Patreon where they made STLs or 3D printable miniatures, and you could subscribe to there was probably like $10 a month. I don't know. That's what the normal was. It's been too long since I've known, and they are off of Patreon now. You can see their little link here, but it doesn't actually lead to a shop page you can actually support. They got out of the STL business and decided to go into the miniature business, the physical business. And I remember covering this a while back because it was kind of an interesting move. They said because of the rampant theft on STLs and stuff, because, once you have an STL, you can just upload it and then anybody can have it, kind of like, LimeWire as MP3s and stuff like that back in the day. So that was kind of their claim, but it was kind of weird because the profit margin is obviously a lot different, though we'll talk about their expenses as well. We'll get over some salaries and stuff. But so they did this, they did that. They also did a Level 52 studio thing. Now this one was kind of weird. They did just these 2 STLs that you could, well, not even STL, like a miniature that you could get, right? Or it was like a collectible thing for like $100. Like if you come here, it was like $99, right? So it wasn't exactly cheap. So anyway, they were running 2 different companies kind of side by side, and they didn't really put a lot of focus on the fact that these were the same company doing these different things. Obviously, they knew about the Patreon. It was named after them, the Broken Anvil Miniatures, right? That was like the own thing. The Level 52 was kind of the separate thing, right? For a large part, when people were discussing it, they were talking about 2 different things. So with that, let's get into this. Now, I'm going to show their update at the end, because we're going to get kind of all the information we can get outside of that, the counterpoints and all that. So when we read their update, which I will read, and I've already highlighted and stuff like that, I'll summarize it for you guys. We're going to kind of go point by point by point with this other information already there, as opposed to the opposite where we read theirs and then go point by point, because there's a lot of different things that adds up to, and it's easier to tie back to that. That's why I'm organizing it that way. Okay, so we're going to start on this Daka post. If you know what Daka is, it's one of the largest forums. It might be the largest forums for miniatures when it comes to miniature games, wargaming, miniature painting, hobby stuff, right? Daka is a reference to Orcs and Warhammer 40,000, which obviously is the biggest tabletop miniature game. So it's a big group of people that talk on here. And this was a Rivenstone Broken Anvil Games thread that eventually led to this. This is on page 3 or whatever. This is by Broke Anvil, a fresh-faced new user. And he says, former Broken Anvil employee here to clarify some stuff. Obviously, this is a throwaway account, and you can't trust an anonymous source, so believe me if you want or not. There are actually 2 people claiming to be former employees I'll be covering kind of both of what they said. So this one, he said, there has been some discussion about Level 52 and Broken Anvil being separate. They aren't. They're the same thing and the same people working on both company projects. Level 52 is the original company that makes statues, and Broken Anvil is just a DBA under a different name. Rivenstone was successfully funded, and we had every expectation of fulfilling the Kickstarter, but due to the success, the company grew too big and was hemorrhaging money. This reminds me of what happened with Mythic Games. What happens with a lot of these companies where they suddenly get this big influx of Kickstarter money, which is different than like a Patreon money that comes in every month or whatever. You just get this big influx. Suddenly you have like $300,000 in your bank account. And you're like, oh my gosh, $300,000. And you start hiring people. You start getting an office or upgrading your office or getting new equipment, or you do all this stuff thinking you have all this money, not realizing that that's revenue, not profit, not realizing the actual expense of making something physical as opposed to STLs like what they were doing. So it's a very common thing for new companies to get this big influx of money and then not be able to budget that out or realize that, oh, that needs to survive me 3 years or something like that, right? There's a pledge manager too, and it's a little bit more gray than that, but that's generally something I see a lot of. Same goes for Patreon. We had 4 sculptors working on the Patreon and 3 engineers. They did pay decent, so at the end of the day, the Patreon was barely breaking even. I don't agree with the changes in direction it went. So I'm going to get into the actual how much they made here in a moment. That'll be the next tab I show you. So we'll get into that here shortly, on like their expenses. And that's from the CEO of Broken Anvil saying it. So I believe it. So that's kind of where we'll get from that. The change in direction is exactly what I said. They were a Patreon STL miniature making company. All they did was sculpt digital files and then sell those digital files. And they went from that to now making actual like miniatures and board games and stuff like that. And it was a very distinct shift. They were one of the first to do that. And like I said, I remember covering it for you guys. And so not everybody obviously agreed with that change in direction, though I would imagine hindsight plays a little part into that. So, due to the company losing money, Rivenstone money was diverted to other projects to try and make more money that way. Again, this should sound familiar. That's where Forged came in. If you remember, Forged was kind of their big one where they launched it several times. This one right here. So there's a whole bunch of miniatures. The genius of Chris is the CEO of the 2 companies, thought Forged would be a giant success like Reaper Bones. Again, we'll cover that actually. And we'd have so much money that we could fulfill Rivenstone and Forged easily. So they're saying, hey, we're going to launch this Kickstarter, make so much money that we'll be able to deliver our old stuff as well. Again, you guys know how this works. You guys know it eventually ends in this always. It's just a matter of when, right? It's bound to happen at some point. You're going to mess up. You're going to trip. You're not going to make as much as you thought. And once you do that, it all comes collapsing down. It's what happens with Peterson Games. It's what happens with Broken Anvil Studio, according to this past employee. That didn't happen, obviously. Forge started funding twice on BackerKit and didn't take off as quickly as Chris hoped, so he went to Kickstarter. It funded, but didn't make nearly enough to even fund its own production. So, in other words, they ran it twice and they canceled it twice. I remember covering this because I remember talking about how even with the shift to Kickstarter, you can only show somebody something new once. So the moment you've seen it a third time, it's not really new. It doesn't really get you excited. I was worried they weren't going to make enough. Now, they ended up running it there and to completion, but as this person's saying, it seems like they knew going into it and ending it that wasn't enough to even pay for itself. However, it doesn't seem like they were trying to pay for it. They were trying to pay for their old stuff, remember? I can tell you for a fact that absolutely nothing has been done on that product since the campaign ended, besides the STLs, but those were already made since they were all Patreon rewards anyway. That money is gone and spent and is never being made. Everyone in the office was excited about them. They were really great. I was super hopeful that these would actually be made because all of the work was done beforehand and all Chris needed to do to fulfill the Kickstarter, that's KS, it's just abbreviated and the highlight breaks it, was to email the company in China and tell them to make the product and send it to us. We had enough for the KS to make them, but again, Chris used that money to delay the inevitable bankruptcy of his company, so I don't think they're ever getting made, which is a real shame. In other words, he made the money off that, but then diverted it to try and fill the other stuff, which still hasn't been filled. So it didn't even work, but they also didn't make the Kickstarter paint stuff now, and obviously that funding is now gone. Me and almost everyone else there was laid off in May. So this was a while back, right? And they did kind of communicate that. For months before that, there has been absolutely zero work done on any project except for new ones that could bring in new money. Now, I've seen this happen before in many Kickstarters. I know you guys have too, where suddenly you only work on what can bring you in stuff. It's like what happened with a lot of the really delayed games that we see. For instance, you see that often with something like Storm Thunder, where or Dawn of Madness even, right? Where you have all the stuff and all you have to do is like sit there and write it or sit there and make it. But instead it's doing this project and this project and this project and this project and this over here and this over here. Or Kingdom Death Monster was like this too, where all you had to do was sit there and make the gambler's chest. But instead of spending 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week on that, you're busy making this many, this many, this many, this many, this many, because those bring you in money, and you're trying to do that to keep it afloat so you can on the side part-time work on the stuff you actually promised before. That's what happens when a company gets to a point like that. They have to focus on just what brings them in money. And this happens in businesses across, outside of even crowdfunded, right? All the free-to-play mobile games, all the free-to-play games you get often are like this, or even live service games where you could just make more content, but why do that when you can sell another costume? So you make another costume or another character, and that's making this, making that, making that. Meanwhile, the bugs don't get fixed. Meanwhile, new content doesn't actually get made. Instead, it's just what people can buy, and that's the focus of the company. It happens all the time, and eventually most of these companies run themselves into the ground and then make something else until eventually they can't do that anymore. They ride on their golden parachutes and they go do something else. That's typically how this works. You see it happen across many entertainment industries. So they're only working on new stuff, anything that can make them money now. I was told directly that Rivenstone was on the back burner and didn't matter because, again, it's not a money maker, it's now a cost. Right? It's not a revenue center, it's a cost center, right? Now suddenly that is just a money pit where they're not making any money. Any money spent on there is lost to them, essentially. The infographics shown on the Kickstarter, like the monthly updates and stuff showing progress, are completely made up. This is something I imagine a lot of you feel are true, especially when it's like, how do you determine 93% to 97%? Well, it's just a number and they increment it every little bit on the month, so you seem like you're making progress. If there's not data to back it behind, you should be kind of cautious about these numbers because often they don't make sense anyway. It's just a pretty graphic to show backers. Okay, so moving on from that, as for the acquisition or merger or whatever Chris wants to call it, we'll get into that, of course. It's been dead for months now. We'll get into that, definitely. And he's been talking about it like it's in the process of happening as a way to delay. The company is dead and everyone's money is long gone, but Chris is too narcissistic to rip off the Band-Aid and tell everyone it's all over. I love everyone I worked with there, besides Chris and Hannah. Obviously, Hannah is Chris's partner. We'll get more into what they're doing in a little bit as well. We hate your guts, Chris. Sincerely, everyone who has ever worked for you. Definitely some strong words. Definitely not a nice way to kind of part. It's and honestly, this does say a little bit, right? You can let go of people because of a bad situation and have them not be upset at you. If you were trying your hardest and they understand and they saw how you worked and how you acted and what happened and stuff like that, and you listened to them and all that kind of stuff, and you can be very friendly with each other, right? It doesn't have to be something where it's like, I hate your guts. To get to that hate your guts part, there's obviously some kind of issue there. Now, whether it's exactly this, whether it's something else, and we'll hear both sides, and we can only make the judge. But I will say, in general, you don't get this kind of response by doing great work and working with people in a great way. Often, if you have that kind of relationship, even if business goes south, which it can happen, business is business after all, and it can happen. But if that happens and you part ways and you've done a really good job, you're not going to get stuff like that. In fact, you'll get defenses like, hey, no, he tried. He did really good. He did everything right. Guys, don't be mean to Chris, right? But obviously, we're not getting that. We're getting, we hate your guts, Chris. So there's obviously some issue there. Now, moving on, there's a user here, Tinted Brush, that talks about it as well. They said the biggest crock of gack he's saying is how they never took paychecks. Again, we'll get into that comment as well, because I'll show you where he says that. Chris is one of the most wasteful spenders I've ever met in my life. DoorDash 3 meals or more a day, every new video game, every DLC played once, random board game purchases he would never play. Look, this is getting a little personal for me here. Miniatures he would never paint. Look, I am seen and I understand. When the company was failing before the layoff, he was bragging about wanting to buy a new car. And as they went on vacation, he's truly a huge POS, and I hope bankruptcy forces him to stop pretending to be a millionaire with what he told us he had all the time, in quotes, adult money. Now, I joke about the buying board games, stuff like that, but I have had issues where there was a time period, you guys may not even be aware on the channel, but I was out of work for 4 months. I was laid off with a massive layoff, 19,000 other people. There was a huge layoff on a big company. And so my whole team was let go, and suddenly I didn't have a job, and the job market here in Little Idaho was flooded, and it took a while to get a new job. And you know what I did? I stopped buying stuff. I didn't buy board games. I survived off Patreon. You guys, that was the first time I was fully reliant on Patreon to run this channel because I wasn't getting it any other way. So like when push comes to shove, if you're busy with a company that's failing, yeah, you're not buying that stuff, or at least you shouldn't be. There was definitely no DoorDash. There was no eating out. right? There was a strict budget that we sat with. And so you do what you got to do, is all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying with that. Okay, so moving on a little bit here, we have Tinted Brush again saying everyone is on a new project now. I just want to let you guys know that the people that were laid off, that kind of helps kind of capstone them. They all have other work. They're doing their talented work elsewhere. Because as you saw, they made some really cool looking minis, right? They look like they did a good job. Broken Anvil was huge in Patreon, one of the largest. They were doing fantastic. So it's great to see that the talented artists are busy working elsewhere. That's great to hear. Really glad to hear that. Okay, and then a few other ones here. This is from Darzan. He says, so I feel like I'm the one who started the spiral on the Forged Mini collection. I was kicked out for asking questions about the production. People actually messaged me after I removed and banned from the Discord about what I said because they were looking for refunds. The moment Chris wouldn't answer questions is when I knew this campaign was dead. If all you do is tell people that you have no news about fixing the poses on minis, that says a lot. Anyway, this was a post that got me banned, and there obviously is a reason. I'm going to go ahead and let you guys read this. By all means, read it. You can pause the video if you want. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Just obviously, he's not asking anything out of the ordinary, and it's actually quite respectful. Now, is that a direct quote? We just have to believe him because obviously it was deleted. But he's saying, I posted that, and instead of answering my questions, they actually force refunded me, so I was kicked out, so I couldn't contact anyone else. And actually, he's not the only one that claims to see there. And typically, if it's more than one person claiming the same thing, there might be some truth behind it. So I'm lending a little bit more credence to that because of that, because he's not the only one saying here. This person said, I'm right here with you, forced refund for +1ing your posts and linking this DACA thread. Anyone who links the thread gets instant refunded. So if you want a refund, that might be a way, though I think it's too late even for that. We'll talk about that very shortly. All right, and then down here, the last thing we're going to cover here is Darzan again saying, I love how this guy is like, and this is in reference to the update we're about to look at. We are going to make this right, so we have, but also, we're going to make this right. Also, we have no money. Now, that's not a literal quote. That's a air quotes thing. Then, instead of asking questions and keeping the Discord locked, and then, instead of asking questions, is keeping his Discord locked and ran away from the Kickstarter. We'll show how he kind of ran away from it in a moment as well. So here is a post from Chris. This is, again, the guy in charge of the company. This is on that Discord that, again, I do not have access to, so I haven't seen anything else besides this. We see this posted around 8:20. It says, no, I don't even know where to start, so let's start from the top of the post from the bottom. This post, I believe, is in reference to this right here. This was also written on 8:20, so it's like a direct response to this post. So somebody linked to it, and he responded saying this. Yep, Level 52 is a parent company. True, no denying that. So apparently, of course it is. We just had two different companies running at the same time and didn't really talk about them in the same breath. But, anytime these companies start making all these other companies, it always makes me a little sus. Like, why can't, you would think building brand is good. So to start changing the companies and releasing some things and different things makes it seem like you're skirting rules and Kickstarter more than anything. And then it comes out like this and you wonder, maybe that's what they were doing. Rivenstone is not on the back burner, but yes, we do only have 2 employees at the moment. One is working daily on Rivenstone. I don't know exactly how that works. If one person's working 8 hours a day, that's 40 hours a week. How much in 40 hours can you make on Rivenstone? Is there actually 40 hours worth of work a week, or is it like contacting them and waiting for a response? That's like saying it took you 3 hours to make dinner when all you did is put it in the oven for 3 hours and take it out, right? Like it's not active time, or it's like me counting programming time as compiling, right? It's the same thing. Like if sometimes you set it there and you just leave and you come back when you're ready. Anyway, moving on from that. No, it did not make as much as we needed it to. Then why did you complete it and take everybody's money? That's a good question. We had over 20 employees at the time, over 20. So again, they blew up. Our payroll alone was $100,000 a month, plus rented over $14,000 a month. So again, after that, then they got this big office to put everybody in. So you had this expensive office, you had all these employees. It's a classic case of people getting the money influx in and then just spending it, not realizing that needs to coast them throughout all these years. Hannah, myself, and Brandon never took paychecks or money from the business. We just took enough to pay rent. Was that not a paycheck then? Like, how was that? Do you just, I guess I've never owned a company enough to know this. How do you take money out of the company and not make it a paycheck? And what kind of hair are you splitting there? Anyway, we took just enough to pay rent, and we have not been paid in well over 4 years. So I don't know how he's eating. I mean, I guess he's at a soup kitchen somewhere, or does he have other money coming in, or is he just like rich? Like, I don't know. Maybe I don't know exactly how that works out either, but who knows? Anyway, I think they're splitting the hair on what paycheck means here. I did have incredibly high hopes for our Forged project, as I felt our project, this is in reference to the Reaper bones, was great and could sell well like Reaper. I am at fault for believing a good product means anything, but in actuality, a good reputation means more. Delivering product means more. Those things will help a product sell, not just the quality. Yes, being able to deliver a product helps sell more product and not just BSing people and not making enough money, but still taking their money anyway. And then assuming, I guess, I don't know, another Kickstarter pays for it. Anyway, so that's his comment there. Now we're going to go quickly to the actual update. Okay. And we're going to cut to a few more updates, but otherwise we're just going to kind of stay here and dig into, here's what was said publicly on the 25th, so 5 days after this post on Daka was posted. And it is understandable here. So it says, I want to take some time to address some of the ongoing issues we're experiencing at BAM HQ and specifically clarify the timeline of what's happened in the last 4 months in particular. 4 months, by the way. Understandably, there's a lot of speculation floating around and it's time to directly address it in order to clear the air. How much do you think it would not have been time to directly address it or clear the air if this post had not been made? In other words, if this guy in Daka, this past employee supposedly, had never made this post, talked about it, do you think we would have gotten this update? Or do you think they would have just kept the ball rolling? My opinion, they would have kept the ball rolling. I call it plate spinning. You know, when you have all these plates and you're spinning it, so you're trying to spin up Broken Anvil miniatures and you're trying to spin up a Ravenstone and you're trying to spin up level 52 and you're trying to spin up this merger and you're just trying to keep the ball spinning and eventually it all crashes down. But you try to spin those as much as possible and they're wobbling. You can tell it's not going to make it, but they do it anyway. That's what I think they would have kept doing here. The only reason we got an update at all is because it finally came out and somebody finally talked about it. So to whoever that past employee was, thank you for putting it out there so that we can actually be more informed consumers. It helps us a great deal to know what's going on with this stuff. And it's not just BS. We'll talk about their past updates in a moment. First and foremost, myself and my partner Hannah, who she is currently working remote, are still working at BAM along with a few core members of our team. The few core members, I believe, is said to be 2. Okay, as we shared in previous updates, we're still in the process of being acquired by a new company with whom we had been in talks with since January of this year. Again, we were in the process. I think I may have said that incorrectly. As time progressed, the soon-to-be ownership assured our team that we were on track to complete the merger within 90 days. Due to the transactional circumstances, we found ourselves without a former budget from the incoming ownership and without the revenue from our client work. We made every effort to preserve our staff, who we firmly believe were the strength of our organization, but payroll and benefits drained our account quickly. If you recall, $100,000 a month on payroll, $14,000 a month on the actual, on rent for like the offices and stuff. So $114,000 every month is what they were costing with their huge 20 plus team member stuff. Then in July, and I've marked July specifically, I added the bold in red, the merger that we had carefully planned with new ownership fell apart, not because of anything our team did or didn't do, but because the prospective ownership experienced a dramatic downturn in their own business over the course of negotiations. Now, I highlight July because just like I said up here, how likely do you think they would have said something if somebody didn't kind of like whistle blow them out like that? Well, if we go, this happened in July. So in July, the merger fell flat. Okay, so what their options are after that, I don't know, right? If they're claiming they don't have any money, they're hoping this merger pays for it, and the merger falls, you would think you would tell your backers, but you didn't. Here's their update from July 7th. Now, again, it may have happened after that. Well, I'll show you another one here. And it doesn't say anything major here. It just says we understand the anticipation. They talk about the fact that they need more bottles, and that's it. They just said they're just delayed. If you need any help, reach out. But just as an FYI, we had such an unbelievably awesome enthusiasm. So many people wanted our stuff. We made so much money selling all of these stuff that we just don't have the bottles for the paint. We didn't think about the bottles. Who knew that when 1,021 backers did it, that all this time later, we forgot we need 1,021 bottles plus times whatever amount people ordered. Who'd have thunk? It's obviously a BS excuse. It falls flat. It's paper thin. I've seen much better BS posts from stuff like Lazy Squire Games, from stuff like Dimension Games, from these companies that just kind of try and spin it, try to make it seem like there's a lot going on when there isn't always a lot. Now, some of them are getting better at that, and so I don't want to like lay blame on other companies that I use as an example. I'm just saying like that is not a very good one. I've read better. I'm sure you've read better. So that falls pretty flat, but obviously no mention of a merger deal. But maybe it happened July 8th, for instance. Well, here's our update from July 23rd. Now, there's still a few days in between July 23rd that maybe it happened then, but I'm assuming it probably happened by now. There's not much to talk about, unfortunately. But you know what? Maybe it happened July 24th. Maybe that's when it happened. So I'm sure on the August 9th update, they would have said something, right? However, still not much to discuss. How is there not much to discuss when your merger fell flat and there was no way for you to deliver your project? It's BS. It's all it is, guys, is BS. They've been lying to you. This was a lie. This was a lie. This was a lie. All of it is a lie to get you to just not get your credit card refund, to not ask for a refund, to pretend everything will go away until eventually they can just ghost out. Or launch another Kickstarter or whatever. All they're trying to do is find another way to pay for it, to scam new people to pay for that. Just like this was supposed to pay for Ravenstone. Just like all of these other past ones were meant to pay for the other one. They've never had the money. When they made the money on this, instead of getting you your product, they put it on the old stuff. And even then it wasn't enough, supposedly. But it sounds like he was buying all sorts of video games and eating out all the time. That sounds nice. I don't do that. Nice that he was able to with the money that, he could put towards this. Maybe buy a new car, go on vacation. Sounds pleasant. Moving on. It just bothers me. Again, why lie when you have a paper trail? Like, people can check. You never told anybody in July this happened. You only do it 5 days after somebody calls BS on you. So what's happening now? Let's see what he's claiming is happening now. The moral imperative to deliver the project we asked our community to support us in creating is a powerful motivating force for myself and my partner. That is such a bald-faced lie. How dare you? That is so stupid to say. Why would you say there's any moral imperative for you to do anything when 3 paragraphs up you lie? It's BS. It's BS. I'm sorry, I haven't been this upset in a while, but I can't stand these lying, scamming, worthless people in this community that do nothing but negative impacts on it. He has made the community worse, and ideally he never touches this community again. Ideally he's out of this industry and he can go screw over some other people. Thank God his business failed. Thank God he's not making more. And if he ever does, I will be right there with the rest of his past employees to tell everybody to never give him another cent. Go flip some burgers or something. Maybe do some real work for once. We have let many people down in this situation. Yes, you have. And you should feel ashamed for that and for your continued pathetic excuses here. We are obligated not to disclose much information at this time. What does this mean? This is weird. While we wish we had more we could freely share with our community, we are obligated not to disclose much information at this time. Once we have more concrete information for you to share, we will. I don't count on it. They will only share information to you if it gets leaked beforehand. You need to have somebody do this before they will tell you anything, apparently. And they've proven that with their actions. And it's not like they apologize for not telling you. They just said, oh, this happened. Maybe you won't look into it. Maybe you're all idiots. Well, we're not. So what that's alluding to, I don't know. Maybe bankruptcy so we can get off the hook of it or something. Despite the challenges that we face, the problem with delivering despite the challenges is Chris. The challenges is the person, right? Your business practices suck. You suck at running businesses. That's proven. There is literally proof we can all point at and say, this is why you suck. Don't do this anymore. So if the challenge is you need to remove yourself from it. Right? This is the same issue that happened with Peterson Games, where they just weren't good at the business side of things. And so the problem is the business. So if the people that suck at business try to fix their business, it doesn't work. That's not how this works. You need somebody else to do it, like a bankruptcy place or a government or something. They're in Seattle, so you don't get that UK stuff or anything like that. It blows my mind that they're like, despite the challenges that we face, it's always somebody else. It's always, oh, this is the problem. Oh, that company didn't bail me out like I hoped. And oh, this didn't have, oh, you know what? You guys just didn't fund me as much as you do Reaper. And if that had happened, I'd be able to pay all my past stuff. And it's all somebody else's fault. No, it's Chris's fault. We have put production on pause for both Forged and Broken Anvil Studio Paint. Again, the production wasn't ongoing. You don't make paint and have no bottles to put it in. It was not under production. While we work on Ravenstone, the Kickstarter from like 3 Kickstarters ago, maybe that one, and regroup. This means the ETA for Broken Anvil Studio Paint will likely be pushed to the beginning of 2024. How? With what money? How does that work? In fact, just back here where you were blaming bottles, you were saying it would take like 30 to 45 days alone just to get, once you bought the bottles, to ship them over to the factory to actually put the paint in it, and then ship it back over there, and then with your 2 people, pack it all up and ship it out to everybody. You were saying it was going to be months and months. Is that done? You didn't say. It's all BS. There's no proof that you're ever going to finish it at all. Do you even have the money for it? If you have that, just refund everybody. Obviously, you've BS'd it all anyway. So yeah, apparently beginning 2024. Let's see how long he can spin this plate, assuming the plate even still spins. My goodness. Forge will likely land in the middle of 2024 or the end of 2024. Again, with what money? Where's the roadmap? Can you put some fake bars like you used to say how far along you are? There's no plan. We cannot offer refunds at this time because of budget. Because they can't afford it. It's all BS, guys. And then if you scroll down here, you'll see, first of all, people linking to the DACA, in which case, thank you so much, guys. Several people are copy-pasting this just to get it out there. And notice they're not deleted. It's because, as far as I can tell, he's coasted out of Kickstarter almost. More on that in a bit. So the reason I say that they're probably still here just ghosting is because they're still busy deleting your voice. They're taking your voice away from you. If they don't like what you say, they will delete it. For instance, they caught these. These were just 1 day ago. This is obviously reported. Now, whether they'll come back, I don't know. If they come back, I'm going to keep this tab open. I'm going to refresh it every day. And when it comes back, because they didn't break any Kickstarter rules, I'll let you guys know. Stay tuned for a future news update on that. And obviously, if you appreciate all this detailed research into this and reporting on this, and maybe some of the passion I bring to this, a subscription helps a lot. A like helps a lot. A comment saying thank you helps a lot. Or there is a Patreon link down below. Thank you guys so much. But okay, so obviously they're busy. And notice, yeah, these are fine, but these 1 day ago things, right? Like, what were they calling out the fact that what I just called out? Promise they can't delete this video. They have no power over me. They can control their Kickstarter and try and manipulate that, but they can't take this away. It's out of their control now, which is why when it was on DACA, they finally had to make an update. So yeah, they're there, but just in the shadows. So we'll see how much this lasts as well too. So moving on from that, Phelan here says it quite well. Let's look at what happened. They knew their company was in trouble from a number of bad decisions and decided to keep it afloat by opening another Kickstarter multiple times with the intention of stealing the money to fund past projects. Correct. That's very obvious now. In fact, he's more or less even stated so in this. They already had the paint formula made and were using the paint internally, plus they sent it to reviewers as well. They had sent out samples to select reviewers. All they had to do was place the order with the paint manufacturer. This was a free win if they had cared to win, but they didn't. They spent the money as they intended on other projects. Then they told us they couldn't fulfill it because they hadn't realized they needed to put the paint in bottles and didn't have bottles. Again, it's all BS. That's all it is. That's all. And anybody who says anything else is just not thinking critically. I'm not saying they're not smart. They would figure it out if they thought about it. They're just taking somebody for their word. It's because they're good people. Because they wouldn't do something like that. They assume that Chris wouldn't. And I can understand that. I tend to give people a lot more benefit of the doubt. My wife calls me naive all the time because I just believe people when they tell me stuff. I assume people aren't out there lying or doing things malicious. But then when I see an update like this, where they knew in July that their merger had failed, and yet they never tell you, they never mention it. It's shameful. It's shameful. The problem with all of this, it's kind of a closing thoughts here, is that while this was one company that was found out, that was finally linked to over DACA, again, thank you to the past employees, if that's who they were, to kind of comment this and force this update into the limelight so that somebody like I could actually cover it to a broader audience to warn consumers away from these kind of people. So that if you ever see Chris or Hannah attached to anything, you never touch it. I'll be sure to try and do that as well. But the problem is there's a lot that are still just spinning that plate. There's a lot that are on, what was this posted on? August 20th? That are August 25th on August 24th. August 19th, right before the leak, right? Where, as far as anybody knew on August 19th, they just need some bottles. No big update. What kind of metal do you want? Right? Nothing, no, nothing really to report on. Lies. That's what it is. How many other companies out there are lying to you? I don't like painting all devs as a bad picture because they are not. The vast majority of people in this industry are wonderful, fantastic, heartfelt, honest, just sincerely passionate people. It's amazing to me. Every time I talk to a developer, every time I go to Gen Con, every time I meet with this other people in this space, whether it's other YouTubers, whether it's you guys, that's why I call you rock stars, whether it's other devs, they're fantastic people. They're just excited about their game and want to sell their game to people so that other people can appreciate it. But these games are expensive, so it costs a lot. So they have to sell it. Like it's fine. It's okay. In fact, a good developer, you want to have a good life. Think of a great game you want and think about how much you hope that they were rewarded for their creation, that they got paid, that they were able to do that as a living and make more awesome games for you to enjoy. This industry is amazing. And so when there's a dark black sheep like this, it's all the more glaring. This wouldn't even be news in the video game industry. This is barely another Tuesday kind of thing. Like, this is nothing. But here in board games, you're almost aghast. Like, who would do this? To miniature painters, to gamers. Who would pull a fast one like this? Who would lie for months? Purposely not tell you, purposely keep you ignorant, purposely want you not to know things. Just amazes me. And I know there's others out there. There are not a lot and they stand out, but they are there. Please back safely. Do your research. If you have questions, reach out to me. Let me know. Maybe I can look into it like I looked into this. Thank you guys for letting me know about this. I know several of you pinged me. I was pinged on Discord. I was pinged on several of my videos, not even my latest one, even past ones. Thank you so much. Emails, all of that works to get the information to me so that I can dig into this and let people know, so I can get the word out, so we can all be better consumers. With that, I will say, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you appreciated this video, there are several things you could do. Like I said, a like and a subscribe, or even a comment letting me know that you appreciate this video, that you're thankful for it. Helps out a ton. Thank you so much. It's why I do what I do. You can check out Into the AM. They're a sponsor here. I do make shirts from them. You can also just check out Game or Create, another sponsor of the channel. Their links are in the description below. They didn't sponsor this specific video. I want to give them a shout out because supporting them helps support this channel and it gets you something cool in return. If you don't want to do that, though, there is that Patreon link or that join button. It does help greatly. It's an expensive hobby out here. I'm working on a review right now for you guys for a nice indie company. I didn't charge them $1 for it. It's free for them because I want you guys to have all the cool information you can. So I do what I can in this space, and you guys can help support that. So thank you so much. And again, if you have any other information about this, feel free to reach out as well. Even if it's anonymously, I can keep you guys anonymous and kind of take in your feedback and work on, again, informing you guys as best as possible. Guys, have a great rest of your day. Don't feel bad. The industry is wonderful, just not broken Anvil miniatures. Have a great day. Bye, guys.